My moment for realization that the pandemic was gonna kind of destroy things was my wife and I were out, we're talking about things, and both of us said, like, have you heard of this COVID-19 thing? And that was the moment where it was kind of like, okay, this is gonna be something bigger.
I remember going to the stores to collect some grocery items and start noticing the shelves are getting empty. It was a panic. It was panic on the stores and realizing that we don't know and how quickly it will come around.
I feel like it was such a slow progression of you're hearing about it on the news, and in my head I was thinking, oh, you know, that's something that's happening somewhere else, whatever. We'll maybe get 1 or 2 cases here, it'll be fine. Seeing what was going on and thinking it wasn't gonna be a big deal here, and obviously I was wrong.
I am the co-chair for health and safety, so the irony for me was there were very few of us who have ever gone through anything similar. My experience was with SARS itself, so it made it a bit easier for me to understood what was necessary, while my employer, ironically, did not. In the beginning, it was workers actually driving what was necessary to be put in place in the workplace.
Because we're considered an essential service, mandating is something that sometimes happens. For those that don't know what mandating is, that's if someone can't come to work, if someone calls in sick or whatever and they can't find someone to cover them, you might basically be forced to stay there. You can't just leave. People are getting stuck there for like 36 hours, 48 hours straight. So we had to bargain in where it had to be for a maximum of 24 hours. And I mean, that was pre-pandemic. Things really with the pandemic, it's gotten worse because our staffing levels have gone down even more. People are getting sick, having to stay home, you know, to be safe in case they have COVID. So yeah, it's just exacerbated the issue.
A lot of public health guidelines were evolving. The employer, we noticed, was not ready for those quick changes to adapt at the workplaces.
Our directors came down and basically said, here's what public health is mandating, and we were subject to following those orders. But there was so much confusion around what was a public health directive, what was a recommendation, and what actually was an order, and it was a huge source of concern.
You know, you had supervisors or managers, they're working from home, but as frontline staff, we did not have that luxury. The racialized group have been impacted significantly more so than any other group. Whether they themselves have contracted the virus or someone they know who have contracted it. And they still have to go out and make a living.
At one point, we were doing weekly meetings amongst our corrections component executives to deal with health and safety issues relating to the pandemic. And it's a lot, working a full-time job and then tacking on a full-time worth of union duties on top of that. There was numerous times throughout the pandemic where we felt our safety was at risk. Our outbreaks in correctional facilities were very severe. In fact, Headingley Correctional Center is the largest single outbreak that occurred in Manitoba.
The burnout is unbelievable. Staff are not able to cope. People just getting really frustrated with work itself and actually left the profession. You know, when you think about nurses just getting up and had enough and leaving the profession, people are just not coping well. You know, mental illness is actually setting in for a lot of folks.
We're government funded, so our pay is often not really enough to give us a decent wage. Our wages are really low in this sector, and because of that we have a lot of staff turnover. Most of my coworkers work 2-3 jobs just to be able to pay all their bills, support their families, so it makes it really difficult.
So what happened is the government basically had a storage hold of medical grade masks, and when we decided we were going to go to an all medical mask throughout our facilities, as well as a number of other industries in the government, they went to this stockpile that they had, and the masks there were extremely expired. So it was actually a teacher who first noticed it in Manitoba who had a breakout of rash on her face. And
my sister has dementia, and she raised me. I was not able to go and see her until 2 weeks ago. I've never been away from her for longer than a few months, and not being able to see her for more than 2 years. Extremely difficult. I don't have family here, so not having that connection or not being able to see your loved one, it just cannot replace that physical contact with people.
As the number of Canadians who tested positive for COVID-19 increased, our society was put to a test to do more. The pandemic shed light on the shortcomings in our society and how normal wasn't working. Our already delicate healthcare system was stretched.
I personally, when I came home, I would be in the garage, stripping down, putting alcohol on myself, then going up and, having a shower before I could even hug my kids.
Our public services were pushed even further. Even our union needed to adapt quickly. And workers were feeling the brunt of the pandemic. In fact, some of our members were locked out during the pandemic, only making a bad situation worse.
It was about the negotiation. It was a long 17 weeks of negotiation. We used all the mediation process to resolve the pending issues. Unfortunately, the employer never gave us a notice to lock us out. We found out early morning through our lawyers reaching out to us that the company made that decision. During the lockout, I felt disappointing, disgusting. It was at the high peak. Toronto was in a lockdown position. Members were picketing outside without any shelter.
No contract! No peace! No contract! No peace! No contract! No peace!
From long-term care to correctional facilities to the civil service, the pandemic had an unprecedented impact on all sectors. The demands increased, but it didn't always follow with adequate support. Workers were told to continue providing the services people relied on, but the tools they needed to do so weren't always there. And then, the National Union took action.
During the lockout, I never felt the sense of helplessness because we have our national union and their component supporting and providing guidance, and they were behind us.
Our fight with the employer through workplace safety and health ultimately ended in a successful victory for us. We got more PPE than we originally requested. We also got a steady consultation with the employer to ensure we were meeting those demands.
It's already a struggle without, you have a unionized environment and your employer trying to shortchange you every step of the way. So think about what that would look like without a union. The union is there always protecting, guiding, and advocating on your behalf.
Especially like right now, my local's in bargaining, and I know for the membership, like that's huge that we're able to collectively bargain, and we're not just at the whim of the employer.
By the time we'd been through 12 months of the pandemic, we had called probably 10,800 meetings. There was no template. Nobody alive had ever been through a pandemic. We came close with SARS, but it wasn't nearly the same thing, of course. I wish the story about the absence of PPE was history. But believe it or not, it's still occurring. We're still having to fight to get good quality personal protective equipment on the front lines, even to this day. It astonishes me. We had a situation where people were given one mask at the beginning of the shift, and they were given a paper bag. And the paper bag was so that when they had to take the mask off during that shift, they could put it in the paper bag and then reuse it and keep it overnight and reuse it the next day. And we were one of the first unions to actually do a study with our Health Sciences Association in BC, our component union there. We did a study of all of the existing literature, and we concluded that it was actually aerosol. The federal agencies and some of the provincial agencies had refused to accept that up until then, and we were able to show the evidence. I'd like to think that we actually saved people's lives as a result of that study. I am just overwhelmed by the way that our members responded. Our members gave their all. They kept the country functioning. They kept the country safe.
The National Union is very important. It provides us a one voice across the country. It actually connects us together, not only across the country, but also internationally as well.
It felt really good knowing the union was fighting for us. I think sometimes, as people are going through their everyday, you sometimes get that sentiment about, what has the union done for me? But I think this was really one case where they really showed that they cared what we were saying, they knew that it was a problem, and they wanted to help address it.
I feel extremely proud and honored to know that my union is there supporting. They're fighting for us in every way possible.
I think without the national union engaging in that advocacy, we would have a major hole in the services we offer our members. We wouldn't have that pinnacle of arguing for better federal change.
We are on the map on so many issues, on long-term care, on climate change, on education, post-secondary education in particular, anti-racism. We haven't quite won the battle yet. We still have income inequality. In fact, it's gotten worse under the pandemic than it was before, and it was atrocious before. There's so many things that we still need to engage in. And what we need to continue to develop is the sense that we are all in this together. The strength that 400,000 people in different unions individually, but all working together towards a common end, is so much more powerful. So we've come a long way in building that collective strength. But we're never going to be satisfied, because there's always a new battle coming on, there's always a new challenge, there's always new people. And we need to strengthen the organization for them, not for us.
The National Union.
The National Union.
The National Union
shall be devoted
and dedicated.
Shall be devoted.
And dedicated.
Shall be devoted and dedicated.
Promoting.
Protecting.
And pursuing.
To promoting, protecting, and pursuing.
By all means at its disposal.
By all means at its disposal.
The achievement of the economic well-being.
The achievement of
the economic well-being.
The general welfare.
And the rights of its members.
And the rights of its members.
And the rights of its members.
As workers.
As workers and citizens.
As workers
and citizens.
Unity.
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 Unity is our power.
Unity.
Unity is our power.
Unity is our power.